It's so interesting to me that we all swear an oath to the Constitution, and we say that we take that oath seriously, but when it comes into actually doing something that looks like preserving that oath or looks like preserving the Constitution, we get a little wobbly, and I'm not really understanding what's going on. Freedom of press doesn't look like kicking out the Washington Post, or actually the Huffington Post has been kicked out. We know that the Associated Press has been kicked out, and now the Washington Post is not going to allow for op-eds in any way if for some reason they criticize the sitting president of the United States. What this is starting to feel like is a smaller version of Russia. And I am trying to tell you that we are nothing like Russia. We are not supposed to be like Russia, but that is what we've got going on. And I'm sorry, I know that some of my colleagues still struggle with answering the question of who won the election in 2020. And you may have felt a way when you had social media checking people and saying, no, Trump did not win the election in 2020. That is absolutely factual. And unfortunately, because some people got all riled up because they believed the lies, they ended up getting locked up because they decided that they were going to believe the lies. They ended up at the Capitol on January 6th, and they were trying to tear this thing apart because they felt like their country was falling apart in front of their eyes because for whatever reason, there were people in power that were peddling a lie about the election. We also know, and some of y'all may still say that COVID was a hoax. COVID wasn't a hoax. Tell that to the over 1 million people that died under Donald Trump's first watch. It wasn't a hoax. So no, I do believe that it was okay. In fact, I do believe that it was ethically right for social media to check people because you had people that didn't know anything about science and decided that they were going to put out whatever lies or propaganda or conspiracy theories they wanted to, and people died. At some point in time, we have to evaluate what is factual, and I know that facts hurt y'all, and I just wish we could get on the same page, but we do know during the presidential election that the president would not go and participate in anything if fact-checking was going to be a part of it, because he didn't want to be fact-checked. We know that the vice president got upset in his vice presidential debate when he was fact-checked. It used to be a time in this country that we as members of Congress or elected officials thought that it was okay to just tell the truth. Instead, we're pushing conspiracy theories, and some of them are killing people. It's the same thing that we have coming out of Doge. It's the reason that people are dying. It's the reason that farmers are losing their farms, because we continue to peddle conspiracy theories. It is time for us to say, Mr. President, guess what? Russia invaded Ukraine. Can we at least agree on that one? Facts matter. Y'all, this is literally potentially putting us into an international crisis. We may be heading towards the next world war because we have a president that wants to pal around with Putin and wants to do everything to make him feel good, including lying about who invaded who. Mr. Chair, I got a minute left, but I really want to yield to any of my colleagues and ask them if they will say today, very basically, that when it came down to the war in Ukraine, that it was not Ukraine that invaded Russia, it was the other way around. Is there anybody in here that has enough courage to say that Russia invaded Ukraine?
You can have my time.
And this is yet the problem. This is the problem. That is not infringing upon free speech.
Will the gentlelady yield?
I will yield to the rank.
Thank you, Ms. Crockett. To be clear, your challenge, I think, was across the aisle, because I think every member on your side of the aisle agrees with the obvious fact that Vladimir Putin ordered the filthy, bloody, imperialistic invasion of Ukraine. And in fact, at the time, Donald Trump as president never denied it. In fact, he praised it. He said it was, quote, an act of genius when Putin ordered the invasion of Ukraine. So I would hope some of our colleagues would consent to at least that historical point, since we think history is so important. There are people who want to relive that in our oversight report.
and therein lies the problem.
The time of the gentlelady has expired. The gentleman from California is recognized.
I'd yield to the chairman.
I just wanted to make a point. We talked, gentlelady, previous speaker talked about factual information. We've talked about fact-checking. Fact-checking, you know what fact-checking is truly supposed to be in this country? The First Amendment, not some expert who can sit on and look at posts and tweets and different things and say, oh, that's not factual, take it down. That's not how it works. Fact-checking is the First Amendment. Someone says something stupid, and that happens every day in this Congress. Someone says something crazy. Someone says something that's not quite true, not quite accurate. You know what the fact check is? Someone says something else, and you have debate. That's what we do in this committee every day. And this is the committee who's supposed to protect that fundamental fact. Real fact-checking is the First Amendment. Our Supreme Court has been clear about that. You don't like certain speech, the best speech for wrong speech is more speech. The best speech for false speech is true speech. That's how it works. You have a debate, and you trust we, the people, to figure it out, not some expert who's going to fact-check every tweet, every post, and we saw this in the Biden administration. We're seeing it in Europe now. We're seeing it in Brazil. That was the first bill we dealt with from the gentleman from California, his good legislation that we all agreed on. We're going to work on and put a good bill on the floor. So that's the key. That's what and we know it happened because, again, we had the guy who runs one of the biggest companies in the world, most successful tech companies in the world, tell us it happened.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I'm inspired by your First Amendment passion. You are the
I knew you would be.
You are the John Stuart Mill of the House of Representatives and the Voltaire of Congress, and you put me in the mood of Justice Brandeis. But I want to ask.
You can stop there.
No, I got to keep going a little bit because I have to know whether or not your First Amendment passion and principles, which I take to be completely true, and I've always known that about you, extend to one citizen named Donald Trump. Now, let's talk about Donald Trump for a second, okay? He is, after all, I think, the President of the United States. And check this out, okay? Everybody in this room who's sitting on this side of the dais is a politician, okay? We have people say stuff about us and say stuff about our rivals and our opponents all the time. I don't know if there's anybody here who's ever sued anybody in politics for libel or defamation. I'm taking that no. I imagine a lot of us have felt like, have you? Well, I'll be curious to hear about that later, Mr. Issa. But the vast majority of us don't sue people, even when we feel really aggrieved by the mean things that people say. And yet, Donald Trump gets to be president of the United States, and suddenly he decides he doesn't like Jim Jordan's approach, which is the answer to bad speech is good speech. The answer to false speech is true speech. The answer to nonsense is the dialectics of expression. That's the spirit of the First Amendment. Well, check this one out. Donald Trump personally suing CBS for $20 billion. The President of the United States is suing CBS for $20 billion. Why? What did they say about him? Did they lie about him? Did they defame him? No, it has nothing to do with him. It has to do with the way he thinks they unfairly edited a video conversation with Kamala Harris. He said that the way the video looked in the commercial for 60 Minutes was different from the way she appeared. The President of the United States is suing them for $20 billion and ordering the FCC, which is part of the U.S. government and under his unitary executive theory, reporting directly to him like a monarch. He's ordered them to go out and investigate CBS. And meantime, his close friend is trying to take over Paramount. And so he's, of course, completely entangled on the business side. That's not the first time. He did it to ABC with George Stephanopoulos, which settled a suit for him for, I think that one was $15 million. The President of the United States is shaking down the media. Would you guys really be so silent and taciturn about this if it was Joe Biden doing that? Honestly, I'm just waiting for one person to answer me honestly about it. Would you guys be okay if Joe Biden had been the one who had said destroy a grand jury subpoena against the Democratic mayor of New York for corruption? Would you be okay with that? But suddenly, because it's Donald Trump, you don't want to do oversight on it. It's the most amazing thing in the world. And there are young people watching, and this is the US government. And we're going to be silent with all of these attacks on the First Amendment where the president is saying, I don't like the words you use. I want you to say Gulf of America, not Gulf of Mexico. Associated Press is now banned from this room. I'm kicking you out. I mean, come on. This is the United States of America. Will any of my friends over there, all of whom understand and love the First Amendment, say it should apply even against the President of the United States? And I know you voted for him, and you'd vote for him again if the Constitution changes and so on. But leaving all that aside, does the First Amendment not apply to him? So I find that we are in an astonishing situation right now.
Will the ranker yield?
I would gladly yield to the gentlelady from Texas.
You brought up the Gulf of Mexico, and, you know, I just left and I was talking about facts versus fiction. I'm curious to know, do y'all agree that it's the Gulf of Mexico? Can we say that that's a fact? Are any of y'all willing to say that it's the Gulf of Mexico instead of Gulf of America?
Well, but reclaiming my time, I would say that these days, that's a matter of opinion. It's a matter of fact from the standpoint of objective sources. But if people want to say it, that's great. I would never kick them out of the room for saying something different. But that's what's happening with Donald Trump. He's kicking people out of the room and punishing them, subordinating their role as press because they're not complying with his orders. That's not the First Amendment. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Arizona is recognized for unanimous consent.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would like to submit for the record this rather ironically titled document. It's actually put out by the Associated Press. It's a little old, it's a little dated, but I just do think it's ironic anyway, nonetheless apropos for today. It's called Report, Obama Brings Chilling Effect on Journalism.
Without objection.